Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Welcome to Critical Thinking video. And in this video, we are going to explore the acceptability of reason, including their credibility. Hi, sisters! In our everyday life, we encounter countless arguments and claims that are made by people to persuade us. For example, friend A tried to persuade friend B to think friend C is a bad person. Scientists try to tell society that the earth is round. Parents try to convince their children to stay away from strangers because it is dangerous. Teachers try to convince the student that the lesson is important. Some of those claims can be true or can be false. But how do we be able to judge what to accept as true? So please keep this question in mind. Before we go any further, let's understand the word acceptability. Acceptability is the agreement or approval of the claim. The interesting part of acceptability is when most people make a no-brainer decision. They settle down their support based on their biases, their belief, and their sentiment without trying to get to know more information or detail about the subject. However, we don't want to be that kind of person. This is where the thinking map comes in. It is created to help us judge the acceptability skillfully. It contains such critical questions for us to ask ourselves on the topic that we are trying to accept. So the first one is, how certain is the claim to be? Following by, does the context of the claim influence its acceptability? Then, does it require expertise research to decide? After that, is it widely known or believed? Continue with, how well does it fit our belief? Finally, is it from the credible source? The question is not going to help us to identify the truth 100%, yet it helps us to be more reasonable in accepting something. To get a better understanding, let's try applying this question with the example from the story Romeo and Juliet. Now you can pause this to read for a couple of minutes. In this example, Lord Capulet, father of Juliet, is claiming that the marriage is good for her by saying it will help Juliet forget the grief of Tiba, her cousin. So first question, how certain is the claim to be? Let's look at this sentence. We all can see the phrase assure himself, right? This shows how Lord Capulet's certainty of his claim. However, this doesn't mean anything yet. We still need more context, which leads us to the second question. Does the context of the claim influence the acceptability? If we look at the first sentence, Lord Capulet mentioned that his ambition had overruled his affection, but he persuaded himself to believe that Paris was the best husband for Juliet. In this context alone, we might not think that Lord Capulet is not really sure about his assertion, and his claim was made upon his sentimental. What's more, he mentioned that he thinks Juliet will be ruled in all respect by him, and so he made Count Paris an offer of Juliet's love. In this context, he was making the decision on behalf of Juliet without her acknowledgement. Therefore, the claim is not really reliable at all because the person who is going to marry is Juliet and not Lord Capulet. Next, does it require expertise research to decide a claim? For this argument, I don't think we need any expert because it doesn't require any profession in family settlement. Now down to the fourth question, is it widely known or believed? I don't think it is widely known in real life that marriage will help forget the grief of someone. In general, if someone in the family dies, the celebration like marriage is usually postponed. So the claim that marriage will help Juliet forget the grief is not really acknowledged by the general society. This is why we down to the fifth question, how well does it fit with our belief? In real life, we will find such claim as disrespectful to the newly dead person. Because someone we know just died, instead of giving the condolence, we chose to celebrate such an event like wedding. Therefore, it doesn't really fit the societal belief. Lastly, the final question is it from the credible source? First, we have to understand that it has a way to judge the credible source skillfully. And to start it, we need to know what is credibility. Credibility is the fact or sources of information that people can trust and rely on. Credibility helps us make the decision on acceptability more skillfully. Credibility requires 5 main sources. They are expertise, reputation, nature of claim, bias, and evidence. In Romeo and Juliet example of the argument, expertise is not required, so we move on to the reputation. In the beginning of the story, Lord Capulet has said that he wouldn't force Juliet to get married without her consent, meaning Lord Capulet has a good reputation of caring about his daughter than to force her to do something that she doesn't want to. But why in the above statement he does the opposite? For nature of the claim, Lord Capulet made the decision because he thought that it would help fix every tragedy, and the marriage is not really what he wanted it. He also made a claim that Count Paris is the right man for Juliet, which might be the bias he has toward Paris' high status. Plus, his claim has no evidence to support it because he made his decision from his sudden emotion. Moreover, it does not have any approval from Juliet, but he just decides right away as if he has the power to decide for Juliet because of being her father. To sum up, the claim of Lord Capulet is really vague and it does not apply to the process at all. As a result, the acceptability has been denied. This might still be confusing for some of us. Let's have another example based on what happened in reality. Now let's take a look at this tweet from Donald J. Trump. In this tweet, the former president of the United States claimed that the election of 2020 is rigged. So let's dive into the claim with our thinking map question. Let's begin with the first question. How certain is it? Donald Trump had used the capital letter in his tweet, which show how genuine he believed that the election is fraud. It pretty much looks so certain because it looked like Donald Trump is sure about what he claimed. But is it really what it is? This is why we have to dig into more specific. Without any further ado, let's apply the second question. Does the context influence the acceptability? First, we have to understand what is mail-in ballot and why is it bugging Donald Trump. In America, mail-in ballot is one of the methods that the citizens use to vote by sending the mail through their local post office or blue collection box. This method is mostly likely used by the people who are supporting the Democratic Party than the Republican Party. To note it, Donald Trump is in the Republican Party. This is why Donald Trump is afraid of mail-in ballot and created a claim saying it is fraud. Therefore, in this context, it doesn't influence the acceptability at all. Which leads us to the third question. Is it required for expertise or research? 2020, the US election is pretty much a big deal to the whole world. So to confirm it, it does need an expert to do the research on it. That is why the US government had put on an investigation and even recounted the vote. And the result came out stating that the election is fair. Now down to the fourth question. Is it voting fraud widely known for everyone? Based on general knowledge, voting is really strict in the US, and for centuries there have been no rigged election in the US at all, since the first president George Washington. For that reason, many people don't really support the claim. But does it fit your belief though? For me, it might likely happen in some circumstance. Nonetheless, I still believe that it is not easy to rig the whole election, which means I believe that the claim is pretty awful. If we want to get more proof, let's also apply the credibility judgment on sources, beginning with expertise. Based on the government investigation and several research from many top universities, it showed that the election is clearly a fair election. For the reputation, the United States of America election campaign has never had any downside or fake election reputation since the beginning of first President George Washington till today. For nature of the claim, if we look at the context, Donald Trump has no evidence to prove his claim. He just created this scenario to make his supporter go wild. And the context that he mentioned mail-in ballot is fraud was also just to invalidate Democratic supporters since they most likely to use the mail-in method. Now we're down to biases and evidence. Donald Trump always wanted to win the 2020 election, so this might just come out of his selfishness to rule for another term. That is why he created this claim. And for the evidence, according to MIT Election Lab, it has shown that 60% of mail-in ballot is from the Democratic Party and the remaining 40% is from the Republican. This shows why Donald Trump has a problem with mail-in ballot because he knows that he might lose to another party by this type of voting method. Fun fact, Twitter company also blocked Donald Trump because the company claimed that he is spreading the misinformation. In conclusion, to become a better thinker, you should use the thinking map to help evaluate the acceptability of the argument more skillfully and reasonably. Hey, congratulations, you reached the end of the video and I hope you enjoy it, and also I hope it helped. So if you have any further question, don't hesitate to ask, because this is the whole point of critical thinking. So thank you.